Welcome to the Master Slave Lifestyle Podcast. Here we'll interview real people living the real Master Slave lifestyle, all consensual and all in different ways. And in this episode,
escorting allows different things to different people. You are paying for a service. You are indulging in your interests. In master-slave connections and relationships there is a power exchange, but still two people have to be fulfilled. Yourself, be who you want, and even if that's only in the time with me, forget about the outside world.
This is masterslavelifestyle.com. So hello everyone, I'd very much like to welcome Sir Dave. Sir Dave defines himself as a master and a fetish escort. And over this episode, we're going to find out more about himself and separate the reality and myths of fetish escorting. Sir Dave, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
So, to start, could you just tell me a bit about yourself? Could you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Okay, so I am Sir Dave. I describe myself as a fetish escort. I'm based in the UK, in Wolverhampton, so right in the middle of the country, which is quite fun sometimes because I'll get phone calls from people wanting a session, and they'll say to me, "Oh, which is the nearest tube stop in London for that?" It's like, well, I'm about 2 hours north of London. I've been doing escort work since about 2007, the fetish kind of side of stuff a few years after that, and full-time working for myself since about 2015.
So tell me a bit about your journey. So how did you get into fetish or BDSM or master slavery? And then what was your journey to becoming an escort as well as part of that?
Okay, so BDSM and fetish and stuff is something I would say has always been there. It's like kind of, you discover your sexuality, and along with that, interests in kind of different fetishes or gears. But at the time, you might not necessarily know that's what they are. It was certainly for me kind of bikers and leathers and stuff from quite a young age. And then always kind of, as soon as I started meeting people interested in kink, BDSM play and stuff, power exchange, and that just developed. I used to be a full-time IT manager, had a whole career of IT, and I was kind of getting a little bit bored with work, so I wanted something to do outside work. So I was working in London at the time. I trained as a massage therapist. So I did a 9-month qualification to become a massage therapist. Started doing that. Worked in a few therapy centres in London and places. Then a few years later, I moved up here to Wolverhampton, to the middle of the country. Started building up massage practice again. And that was going well. And anybody who's ever done anything with kind of massage as a profession, you will always get the what we refer to as those calls, people asking for something that's a little bit more than just a therapeutic massage. And for me, I actually know where it all started. I had one client who was a really nice, he's a regular client. He was kind of about mid-50s, coming up to retirement. And we just really connected. And throughout a couple of treatments with him, things just developed and grew. And pretty much from there, it was very much full kind of, naked massages, lots of intimate touch, lots of exploration. And through that, I found out from him, from his point of view, he had never been naked intimately with another man. And for him, it was just a real kind of emotional moment where he just discovered part of, for him and stuff. And I just really enjoyed it. Actually, I thought this is a really nice, amazing thing to be able to do and help people with. And yes, we then started pretty much advertising that as a specific treatment, a specific service. And that was going really well, really popular. And then people would be asking about kind of, my interests and what I liked. And like people say, oh, can I have like a blindfold, or can you have, do you got any little like handcuffs or anything? So it's like, okay, well, yes, I actually have a whole lot of this kind of stuff. And so I just started building that into it, bringing that into it. And then it grew from there. It just got more and more, and then got to the point where actually, I love doing this myself with people. So I just then started offering it as a whole service, and then the full fetish escort just took off. And it's just been really popular, and been an amazing journey with some amazing clients and amazing people since then.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It comes across very powerfully. It's interesting because there's some things there which, when you look at it, might not be what you expect from the stereotype. So for instance, people asking about your needs.
Yes, absolutely.
Have you found that this is something that comes up a lot, even with escorting? There is more about a mutual kind of trying to understand each other.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most common things is, all the sessions and stuff, obviously, I like to find out what people's interests are, their kinks, their fetishes, what they would like to experience. And so often, a really, really common thread is people saying, I want to do things you enjoy. I want to do things that you get off on. So people, they want to come and have sessions, but the focus for them is actually me and pleasing my interests. So it's very much the power exchange for them of service and servitude.
Interesting. So for you as an escort, are you trying to figure out how they can serve your needs, but also that you make sure that they have a good time doing that as well?
Oh, absolutely. It's there was a tweet I saw a while ago on somebody was having a bit of a moan about kind of getting loads of messages from subs and people, basically kind of with a bit of a prescriptive list of what they want. They want you to do this, want you to do that, and he just tweeted it and said, "I'm getting really pissed off with this now. I'm not a service dom." Like, well, I am.
Yes.
It's that's what I do, and the hardest part is working out what do people want. What do they? I mean, so a lot of the time, you have people coming for a session who've never done anything with anybody. They may never have been naked with another man in that kind of situation. So you've got to kind of get them comfortable, and you've got to work out what are the buttons they want pressing.
It reminds me a bit of another master that I knew, and he did some escorting on the side, and he was actually there to allow someone, I think that in their late 40s or 50s, to actually come out. But they came out as a slave as well. So it was like they had their first experience as a gay man, but also an experience as about being a submissive to another man, and kind of really helped him on that journey. And he actually thought there could have been a relationship there, but as part of that sort of service dom, he felt the right thing was to allow that person to go and explore more, because they had no experience, and now they wanted to go out and see what else was there. Now they'd kind of come out.
Yeah, I have had, it's so amazing. I have had quite a few people over the years who have come to me for their first sessions of kink play. Some of them aren't out at all. Some of them are, very kind of out, just, kind of gay men out in the world, kind of shagging around, but they've not done anything BDSM related. And I've had people come to me and they've kind of, we talk and they try those first things, and now I see them on Twitter or online on different apps just completely flourishing, just out there enjoying their sexuality because they've had that positive touch initially, that positive experience of kind of the introduction has been good for them. It's helped them understand what they like. There's a few people I've spoke to online who are in kind of lifestyle master-slave relationships, and a few of them, one of the two have both initially when they started out, started seeing escorts first to build their confidence in their interest. Which I really, I mean, these are very experienced people, and it's really nice to see that other people actually, there is a real benefit of you, what you do, and your work.
So we're sort of touching on this at the moment, but I'll ask the question explicitly. So what does escorting allow?
It allows people to enjoy and explore their sexuality in a safe, confidential space. It allows people who maybe can't have relationships with people how they would like. I do have a lot of married clients, and that's straight married, gay married, partners know, partners don't know. It's different for everybody. Everybody's reason for coming to see me is different. So I'll have a few people who, partners don't know. But they have this little itch they want to kind of scratch every so often. And it might be once a year. It could be every 6 months, every 4 years. They will come and they'll have a session, and that just gives them a release that they need and they enjoy. I also have some clients whose partners know they come and see me. They're perfectly happy because they don't share the interests, but they want their partner to be satisfied. And also, quite often, they like the transactional relationship. So it's not seen as cheating or anything. It's literally, you are paying for a service. You are indulging in your interests.
That's fascinating. Some of the words that kind of came up for me there was like this exploring and safety. And then through that exploring and safety, you've actually had people that have gone on to then decide to do this as a full-time relationship with someone else. So, they've used the transactional nature to do that exploring, but then they've decided to go and look for something that's more has more depth from a relationship point of view.
Oh, definitely. And the safety thing is a really interesting one as well. Is I've had people who come to see me to reconnect with their sexuality or reconnect with their body. So I have had people who have been sexually abused, they've been raped, they've been in abusive relationships, and then for years they haven't seen anybody sexually or they haven't been naked with anybody else. But they've come to me because they feel, because of the nature of it, they can say, right, okay, this is my situation, this is how I feel, but I don't want to feel like this anymore, but you can help me get past some of these barriers. Yeah, and I always say to people, I am not a counsellor, I am not in any way qualified for any kind of emotional support, but I can help you physically reconnect with your body.
So what else does escorting allow?
So escorting allows different things for different people. So I'll have some people who it's very much about BDSM. Some people it's about the fetish. So they have a real interest in a particular type of gear, a particular type of material sometimes, and they just want some time to be able to explore that with somebody, because maybe they can't have that, within their situation. But a lot of time, for a lot of people, it's about release. Now, it's not necessarily physical release; it can be emotional release. So more like a de-stressing type of thing. Now, I've got two regulars who come and see me who are perfect examples of this. Very different. So the first one, there's nothing about it at all. It's literally, there's no dress sense, there's no fetish, there's no gear. So I can be in jeans, t-shirt, pajamas. He doesn't care. He just turns up at a prescribed time, walks into the dungeon, and is straight over the whipping bench. Just pulls his trousers down, lies across the whipping bench. That's it. Then, no warm-up, straight into a hard caning.
Wow.
And the cane it has to be lines and marks. If the marks aren't going to last a few days, it's not hard enough. And then after that, he kind of gets up and he leaves. And that's it. And so it's going to be like a 10-15 minute session, if that. And for him, that just gives him that pain, that kind of particular type of pain you get with caning, it only comes from caning, is a real emotional release for him. So sometimes you might have it, regularly. Sometimes it might be a year or two between sessions. It's just when he needs it. But then you go to the other end of the scale. I'll have somebody else who, he'll turn up, he'll come, and he'll book to like a 2 or 3 hours, and then we have a little chat first, we'll talk about things, then it's almost a little bit of a ceremony. It's like undressing, and then I have a Mr. S neoprene sleep sack, and then he will get into the sleep sack. We'll put earplugs in, a tight leather hood, blindfold, ear defenders on top of the hood, strapped up into the sleep sack, and then extra straps put around it. And then I just leave him there for hour and a half, hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And I'll sit there, I'll be reading a book and something. No interaction, nothing. He's just completely floating off in his own little world for a couple of hours. And then that's it. So at the end, we just finish off, bring him back to earth, ground him again, and then off he goes. And two completely types of sessions, but realistically, not many people could go onto some of the apps and go, "Oh, can you just put me to sleep for 2 hours and leave me there?" Or can I just turn up and you give me a caning and then I'll leave? So people like the convenience of, this is what I like, this is how I'm going to kind of de-stress, and I can come along, I can have it without any worry about, are they going to be okay? Are they going to do it how I want? Is it going to satisfy my need? And they can come, have it, and leave happy and relaxed. Or with a sore bum.
Thank you for sharing that. As we've been speaking, I'm sure some people are kind of thinking, but why would I pay someone for this? I can get this myself without having to pay. Could you tell us some of your thoughts around that?
Why do people want to pay? People will pay for different reasons. Firstly, privacy, confidentiality. They are confident by, I'm not going to talk to people about my clients. I'll talk generally like we have today about things I do, but I'm certainly not going to give any specifics about who visits or anything identifiable about anybody. There are clients who also will come for sessions and I don't talk about what I do in those sessions because I know they don't want me to, and that's absolutely fine. We've said it previously, people's situation. So, they are married and they want to have some fun with somebody, they want to explore something, but they want to make sure that it does stay private. The people also as well, again, we talked about as well, is that people want to explore and try something out. And they want to be confident that the person who they are playing with doesn't mind the fact they have no experience. They are happy to be introduced to somebody. Now, you get a lot of people online say, I'm happy to introduce newbies or people who aren't experienced. But then people also, they want to have their own fun as well. So they might get a bit bored of all the time and just keep getting lots of new people. They don't get that connection with people. Another random one is try before you buy. I have in my room, I have two suspension hoists, electric and a manual one. I have a whole bunch of suspension equipment. It's something a lot of people are really interested in, but it's a big financial commitment, and also a lot of people haven't got the space to be able to do that. So again, you can hire a car for a weekend. People might hire a Ferrari or a Porsche for a weekend because they want to try that type of supercar. So just hire somebody to do something with suspension to try it out. Or milking equipment. I've got a couple of different milking equipment. £1,000 milker isn't something you're going to think, I'll just try that. I'll spend £1,000 to give it a go. Whereas you could spend £100 for an hour to try it to see what it's like.
So we're sort of coming back to the exploring or experimenting again, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. There is one other one as well. I get quite often people phone up and they'll be like, I've got this fetish, or I've got this thing I really want to do, but it's really weird. You'll think I'm really strange. And I've never told anybody about it. So it's the confidence of being able to actually confess isn't the right word, but share their interest with somebody, knowing that they're not going to get judged, they're not going to get ridiculed, they're not going to kind of all of a sudden find out later online that, oh my God, this person I've told about my fetish, whatever it is now telling the entire world about it.
Something which has come into my mind as we've kind of been speaking, how can someone know whether someone is a good escort or a bad escort? So we've kind of used these things about safety or confidentiality or non-judgmental. How can someone know the difference between someone that's good and someone that's bad? What could they look out for?
For me, I would say it's how do they present themselves. So, their social media presence, their website. I mean, for me, one of the biggest things I get is so many people commenting on my website because I've put a lot of effort into it, a lot of time into it, to hopefully show that I'm not just doing this as trying to make a little bit of money on the side. For me, this is a job. It is my business, and I have to see it and run it as a business. Talk to them as well. Now, this is a really difficult one because I can get people phoning me up, asking me lots of questions, and it's very much, right, you ask me lots of questions with a phone in one hand, and you've got your dick in your other hand.
Yes.
So, but then you can have people phoning up and asking questions who are genuinely interested in trying to find out, are you the kind of person they want to see to have a session with? So you have to be conscious about not asking too many questions. It sounds like you're basically just looking for phone wank fodder.
Do you have some examples of good questions that people can ask to kind of find out what, whether the escort is what they need without, let's say, moving into the ranking masturbation?
I would just silly things like, people ask me how long have we been doing it, regulars, time and some available. If what time, if you say to somebody, when are you available? If they're only available for like 1 hour a week or at very certain specific times, to me, that would say that, well, they're not really actually committed to this as a job. Now, you can go on a lot of the escort listing websites and you can just see a lot of people are listed on there because they just think it's a bit of easy extra money. The people who've actually put effort into their marketing promotion. Websites, are they just literally on, I wouldn't say rentboy.com, but that's not been there for years, on a listing website, and that's it? Or do they actually have other social media presences promoting their services?
Okay, and then let's say for the actual experience, how can someone know whether this is good or bad based on their experience?
The first thing for me, I would say, is how interested is the escort in your fetish or kink. So if you say you have a particular interest in bootlicking, but they're a bit kind of like, oh yeah, not really that interested. You have to build out, make sure they will satisfy your need. So you have to be very upfront about what you're looking for. You can, with some people, you can be very prescriptive of, I'm looking to do this followed by this, followed by this, followed by this. Because the escort is a service dom. They are providing that service for you. If that gets you off, that's absolutely fine. If they are hesitant about any limits or dislikes you have, that's a really good indicator for me. And ultimately, at the end of a session, have you enjoyed it? Do you feel good about yourself? And it was a really interesting tweet recently. I wish I saved it. It was basically, in a session, I can degrade and humiliate you to the extent you are looking for. But at the end of it, you should feel positive because it's been a positive experience. What we've done in the session is seen as being degrading, humiliating, but it's done in a way to make you feel good about yourself. If you don't feel good about yourself at the end, they failed in their job.
It's strange, just taking that into a master-slave relationship, I think that's also very true. That what's done to you, let's say, as a slave, if you leave that feeling bad, or have some sort of negative experience, it's probably not the relationship or it's not the dynamic you need. Because I've had that sometimes, that I've seen someone and it just hasn't worked, and I've kind of left it not really feeling satisfied or any sort of joy. And I know the master's probably been quite happy because I served them well, but I think it should always be a reflection. How did you actually enjoy the experience? And if not, why not?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a really interesting one in master-slave connections and relationships is there is a power exchange. There is the the rank and the role differences, but they both have to, still two people have to be fulfilled in that scenario and in that lifestyle choice. So you still, as a slave, you still have to have fulfillment from what you are doing. It might be stuff you don't particularly enjoy doing. You hate doing you hate doing the dishes or cleaning out the fire, or you hate being flogged. But you are getting fulfillment from it, and you're feeling positive afterwards because you have done that and has pleased your master.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. That especially when it comes to a relationship, you're not going to enjoy everything in it. There will always be bits which are a bit of a compromise, let's say.
Yes, and that goes both ways as well. There'll be things that a master will do that not necessarily their kind of big interests, but it maintains the relationship and the dynamic and the connection between two people. Like any relationship, there's give and take.
Something else that someone who I knew did escorting told me is that for the escort to have empathy is very important. What's your view on that?
Oh, that's incredibly important. I think empathy is one of, for me, I think it's what people have told me makes me so good at what I do. Because it's that you have to understand the people you're with and what they're looking for. You always have to remember that why they are with you. And it's giving that emotional experience. If you are purely focused as an escort on your own dick and your own sexual satisfaction, you're failing in your job, because you have to be able to satisfy the client. And part of that is you have to be able to read your client as well. You have to kind of understand their needs and understand their desires. And sometimes they'll really surprise you. And there was one client particularly who has been seeing me for quite a few years, and we were literally come for a session. It was really nice. We're having a little kind of chat at the end, and just at the end, he's there, and he's just like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm still alive because of you."
Wow.
And I was like, well, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, so when I first came to see you, however many years ago it was, I was really depressed. I was really lonely, and I'd basically decided I tried everything, and I actually had everything all planned out. How I was going to do it. I was going to kill myself at the weekend, just to kind of end it all. I just had no interest in anything. But then I thought, I tell you what, I'll go and see this Dave guy. Just, he's not going to do anything for me, but what the hell? I've got nothing to lose, so I'll go and do that." And then he was saying that he came, saw me, and literally it was just his life changed in that moment. And it was just like the depression lifted. He was able to get on back to his old self. And it's just like the way he just put it into the middle of a conversation, just really casually. And it was just like, that's quite a powerful thing to know, that, just seeing somebody for an hour and a half has such a powerful influence on them.
What did that experience mean for you personally?
Oh, everything. It was amazing. Just to know that I've actually been able to help somebody out of one of the darkest periods of their life was just, you can't get much more rewarding than that. And it's also, I was always quite grateful almost that I didn't know where he was mentally, emotionally when he first came to me, because that would have changed my focus. So to actually a few years later to find out the impact I've had on that person's life, and with them in that situation, not just their life, the lives of all their friends and family around them, it's amazing. And it's also as well quite really powerful because it's so personal. Nobody knows what happened or why his life kind of all of a sudden turned around. It was amazing. I was just so touched by it. that story is shared with his permission as well.
Thank you for sharing that. You're listening to MasterSlaveLifestyle.com. The website and podcast are devoted to the Master Slave lifestyle. There's now a free download to help you take the next steps in the Master Slave lifestyle, suitable for both beginners or those that want a full-time relationship. And there's also a Patreon membership where you can support the website and this podcast and receive benefits such as early access to the next episode, free workshops and more. Check the show notes for information on both the download and the Patreon membership. And now back to the episode where you're listening to me talk to Sir Dave, a master and fetish escort. I just want to come back to this idea of empathy and the connection again, as we can all have very different meanings to these words. So I'll be interested in what empathy or connection means from your perspective as an escort.
Empathy and connection for me is providing the client with a quality service, quality time, helping them understand themselves in some ways, understanding and exploring their own sexuality, and helping them build a confidence in that. It's the empathy and the connection is a really hard one. It's something you can't teach quite often. You just have to be able to understand people. For me, a lot of it actually came from my initial days as a massage therapist, I think, and some of the training I did with that. Because the touch is incredibly transformative for people. Said about different clients and the impact it's had on their lives. Connection's the hardest thing to get with somebody, because if somebody's chatting to you on one of the apps, on Recon or FetLife or whatever it is, the initial contact generally comes from physical attraction. Most cases, people see somebody, I go, I fancy that person, I wouldn't mind playing with them or doing whatever it is with them. For me, there is never that connection. Now, it may well be I might have a client who makes a booking because they've seen the website and they've seen the photos and think, I really fancy how that guy looks. I want to serve him. But in the session, I've still got to build that connection with the client in that relationship. So I have to understand what they're looking for, what they want to get out of their time. And that changes as the session goes on, because as they might come expecting to do one thing or with a desire to do something, but as they relax into a role, that might change, and how they are you have to adapt to what they are feeling at the time. So somebody might, I've had people come and they are looking for degradation, humiliation, but as you start off, it almost transcribes into much more positive touch and stuff, a bit more, because a physical exploration, because their mind, they think they want something, but when they get into a headspace, it just changes and develops and grows, and it's really hard to explain.
Thank you. To ask another open question, so this idea of, let's say, empathy or service, what do you think, let's say, a master who wants a relationship can learn from your experience?
It's not one way. So a master-slave connection isn't only about the master's desires and needs and interests. There has to be a two-way connection. It's give and take. The master will lead and the slave might follow, but you have to be on the same path together.
It's strange, because for me, I've always kind of thought that there is this sometimes mistake or misnomer that the slave has no needs and the master gets all of his needs sorted. But even if you go to, like, say, one of the most brutal forms of slavery, you still have needs around health, control, structure and discipline, humiliation. And if a master doesn't fulfill those needs, that is a toxic relationship within the dynamics of a very strict master-slave. So there is always this thing about both parties need to fulfill each other's needs. And you can come across relationships or thinking where it's that I, as master, take whatever I want and never fulfill any need of any sort, be it slave needs or human needs. And I always think those are quite toxic relationships.
Oh, they're incredibly toxic, and they're also never going to last, or they can never have long-term fulfillment. Even for a master in a situation like that, is because the slave will never feel fulfilled, resentment will set in, which will affect how they will serve their master. So it's a long term. It can never be a fulfilling connection and relationship.
And is there anything from the slave side you would say is good for a slave to do, from your perspective as a fetish escort?
For me, I would say let yourself be who you want. And even if that's only in the time with me, forget about the outside world. We are in a space and a time where you escape. So your desires, your interests are there for you to fulfill. And by fulfilling those, you will serve me better. You will I will enjoy seeing you relax more in your role. I will enjoy seeing you get into it much more. There's nothing better for me than that moment when I have somebody and they just relax into everything. They forget about their life, they forget about their job, and all of a sudden their focus is purely on me or what we're doing, and it's just their eyes light up. And it's like a magical little moment. And that's the bit that I love. It's my favourite bit.
That sounds really beautiful. Is there any advice you could give someone on how to let go?
In a strange way, it's the hardest one. It's trust. So people will come to me, and I've had people who will book a session, and we've talked about it, we've discussed it, we've planned it, and they've got loads of things they really want to do, loads of strong fetishes, loads of strong desires, but we've never met. So they also have to set their expectations and trust the person they're with. So if you want to, don't set expectations too high. Just let yourself relax and trust the person you're with to let them lead, let them kind of fulfill your desires.
The phrase that comes up for me as you're speaking is go with the flow.
Oh, completely. Yeah, definitely. And you say, so I have some people who will be quite prescribing the things they want to do in a session, and that's absolutely fine. And I have people we do that with. But sometimes we're going through, and it just all of a sudden will click on something else, and so it might go off slightly to do some other things you haven't thought about. And let yourself go with the flow of doing that. Don't get too hung up on, but I wanted to do this instead. We're doing stuff that you're enjoying that's really good. So again, trust.
Thank you. So I think we've already covered a lot of it, but I want to ask the question in case we've left anything out. So what are the attributes or behaviours that are important for an escort to have that we haven't spoken about yet?
I would say openness, an understanding of your role and what you are doing, and making sure you treat it as a business. You have to have a bit of a business head, and you have to think about marketing, you have to think about promotion, you have to think about boundaries of your time with your clients. And that's not the physical kind of like, say you've booked 1 hour, so literally 1 minute past the hour, now we're finishing. It's boundaries crossing within, making sure the relationships are appropriate to what they are, they should be. Some people will confuse a escort relationship and a relationship. And you have to be confident in yourself to actually say, no, this is what we're doing. Yeah, and confidence in your skills as well, and just knowing in your own limits. I always ask at the start of every session any likes, dislikes, limits, allergies. And I have my own limits and things I will do, and I have to be very strict and confident in those, and they're part of my boundaries as well. I have some things I enjoy doing, but I will keep them as personal things that I will do socially or with slaves or subs I know personally rather than professionally, because separation, this is a job, so you have to have that separation. Keeping professional and personal can be hard at times.
And is this something for you that kind of you had a clear idea when you started, or have some of these boundaries emerged or become more explicit as you've kind of done more escorting?
Oh, they've emerged and grown. It's kind of, I talk about it as a business and stuff, but it's not really. I don't particularly know of any escorts that have sat down and worked out their business plan for their escort business. So as you grow and as you see people, you will start to actually go, those are things I'm happy to do with clients. These are things I want to keep for my own personal enjoyment. So they're always growing, developing, and changing. But then the limits and stuff, I'll have some limits that I don't deal with anybody. More because I'm kind of, a lot of these, like the safety things, like breath control and stuff, it's just more my own risk averseness.
You've spoken about one moment, but are there any other moments during your experiences as an escort that have surprised you?
I had a lovely client. He was in his 80s and came to see me. And he's one of those kind of really old fellas who likes to tell a story about when he was in the army. He was like a brilliant regaling with stories and stuff. And he came, we had some amazing sessions. And then he was basically talking about how, he's literally probably going to die in the next couple of years. And this was like about 4 years ago. But he said to me, I'm quite happy with that because I can lie on my deathbed. I can have a big smile on my face. Nobody around me will have a bloody clue why, because I can think about all these things we've done together.
That's really beautiful.
And that was quite lovely. Yeah, that was quite lovely for me. And it's those little moments, the things that really kind of touch me. It's just those kind of where you've really connected or with somebody emotionally on a different, you've really satisfied an emotional moment for them. Oh, there was one other moment was quite fun, which was I had somebody who we're doing a whole scene, and he was very much kind of leather worship, cocksucking, kind of face fucking. That's all fine. Brilliant. We're really into it. We've got a really good connection. We're going really well. And all of a sudden, he just leans back, takes his dick out of his mouth, takes his teeth out, and goes, "That's better," and carries on. And it's like without a beat, it was just like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." So you have to be kind of prepared for slightly surprising moments and to kind of
Just something that can apply to BDSM in general.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So, yeah. And you had I've had the had a couple of people in the middle of sessions faint. Which is always kind of takes by surprise sometimes. And they get both of them have always said that's why they keep coming back, because of that moment, how they were cared for and looked after, and how was the most important part of it. It gave them the confidence in their safety.
I think that's a very good hint for, let's say, any relationship. When things go a little bit wrong, how does the person react?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because there are some people that are more interested in how their expertise has been perceived or been harmed by something going a little wrong, rather than caring for the person.
Absolutely. And also as well, it's things like, what, sometimes you're doing stuff and it's just, we've all had it where you had a really intense scene and all of a sudden something happens and you just both literally lose it, even fits or giggles, or it just, something goes wrong, and it's like, that's fine. We'll just have to deal with it and not get too hung up on things.
I'd like to share one story of someone else that I know who does the occasional escorting, and it was their first ever time as an escort. And kind of like it came to the end of the session with the orgasm, and all of the person would do was say, oh my God, and just walked out still saying the same thing. And for the next couple of weeks, the person was wondering, was that good or bad? Now, 4 years later, they still see each other, so I think it was a good experience. But
absolutely.
they said for the first time, they're like, was this good or bad? I don't know.
No, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's one. Randomly reminds me of one piece of advice I give to people. Always be happy to sack clients, because you will have clients, you'll have people that you don't feel they've respected you, or you don't feel you're working with them very well. So you just say to them, "No, I'm not going to see you." Sometimes I get a bit arsy and pissed off with you, but against your own boundaries. And that also reminds me of my people, like, kind of the orgasm moment. My shortest session was 4 minutes.
Wow.
And that was 4 minutes from walking in to like, oh my God, I just come. And I don't think I even touched them at that point.
Did they come back?
No, they didn't. No. Like, okay, your quickest orgasm ever, you didn't come back.
So I'm coming on to the final two questions, which I ask everyone in the podcast. So from your perspective as an escort, what do you think makes a good master?
Empathy. Willing to learn. Knowing that you don't know everything. Knowing that you will never 100% share interests and desires with anybody. You'll always be slightly different. And for me, I think the biggest one is exploring. You are happy to explore your interests and find out more about them, whatever they are. It's never stop learning.
And then what do you think makes a good slave?
A lot of the same things. I would add in a few things, like always be prepared to say no. Make sure you will always retain the ability to actually go, something's not working for me, or that's too far for me, or I'm not interested in it. I always remember there was the book Ask the Man Who Owns Him, I think it's called. And there's a great little one of the stories in there was one of the master-slave relationships. They had I can't remember if it was weekly or monthly, cocktail night. And then on that night, they would both basically just, they would have a few cocktails, they'd make some drinks. But for those few hours, there was no judgment. There was no master-slave time was paused. So they could both have a bit of time just to kind of debrief and explore mutually their understandings of what's been going on, how they're feeling, and just making sure they can both maintain the relationship.
Reminds me a bit of Porch Time, which was in the first podcast episode, where even though there was a lot of power dynamics in that relationship, there was still the time to communicate and talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really important for both sides, because sometimes it may well be a slave saying to the master, be stricter, be harder, be more something, or it could be the master saying, actually, you're kind of pushing this too hard for me. And while the relationships are power exchange relationships, there still has to be ongoing negotiation and ongoing exploration of the limits and the interests and understanding of each other. Because while you may really connect with somebody, you may really get on and may have an amazing, powerful time, you're still not mind readers.
And then in terms of the master-slave community, do you think there is one? And if so, what would you like to see changed in the community?
For me, the one thing I think I would like to see is more mentoring and support. It's really interesting. So I'm obviously UK, Wolverhampton and stuff, and it's quite interesting. The amount of times I'll be talking to people and they'll be talking about, we're going to Folsom this year, or are you going to Folsom? And in my head, Folsom is San Francisco, whereas everybody else I talk to is Berlin. Because I've only ever really done much more of the American leather events and stuff. So I would love something like Claw. So a hotel-based convention with loads of education, mentoring, discussions, social time in Europe somewhere. But I'm not sure whether Europe has the culture to have that kind of thing, but that's what I would love to see. But I think someone sort of mentoring a support system or network or opportunity of people, because at the moment there is, your website's amazing. There's loads of great information and resources on there, but it's one of the very few places, I think, for people who are looking for a bit more than just the occasional fuck, or they just want to play. That's fine. People who are looking for more actual dynamic to their relationship. And I think a lot of people do, but they don't know where to go or how to get it or how to build it.
So for anyone that's listening, if you go to masterslavelifestyle.com, I do offer free coaching on that. So there is a source there. But if something like an educational event is something that you'd be really interested in, please email me at contact@masterslavelifestyle.com and let me know, as this is something that if there's enough people in Europe that would be interested, I would be looking to do. But we need to know there is the need there. So please do get in touch.
Definitely.
So, Sir Dave, thank you so much for your openness and for sharing this. I find it quite amazing to see how something like escorting can actually really help with the master-slave relationships as well. And we've kind of dived into a number of issues here. So thank you so much. It's been very thought-provoking.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
If you'd like to be interviewed by me or know someone who would, you can get in touch with me at the email contact@masterslavelifestyle.com. You can now support the podcast, website and Master Slave community through Patreon membership and receive benefits such as early access to the podcast, exclusive video workshops and more, along with my thanks for supporting me. There is now a free download to help you take the next steps in the Master Slave lifestyle, suitable for both beginners and those who want a full-time relationship. Check out the show notes for more information on both. And if you're interested in finding out more on the 24/7 Total Power Exchange lifestyle, go to the website at masterslavelifestyle.com for more information. Thank you all for listening.